So you want to be a composer. Well, that is fantastic. And I'm glad you're here, and hopefully I can help. Now look, there's lots of different ways to approach this topic, and there are many, many composers who are very successful who don't engage with the types of things that I'm going to be talking about in this video. But this is my video, and my perspective is that if you learn some of the fundamental things that I talk about, it might just help in your quest to become a composer. And so here I am, and I'm going to offer my thoughts on what are some of the fundamental things that you might need to know. So the first thing I think is obviously you have to think about, what kind of music you're going to compose, what instrument you're going to use, why are you composing, are you composing for a secondary purpose, or are you composing absolute music, and all these things. Those are all things we can talk about. But I just want to get into the fundamentals of sort of how Western music operates, just to give you a fundamental understanding before you set off on your quest. Or maybe you've already set off on your quest, and this is something just to help you along. So I'm going to share my screen, I'm going to have Sibelius open, and I'm going to have a Word document and things, just show some various tools for you. I'm just going to keep teaching until I decide to stop, and then maybe I'll do part 2 and part 3, or I don't know, but let's just see how we get on. So, the first thing I typically teach students is to do with, this idea of a C major scale, which is the white keys on the piano, right? So there you go, those are just the white notes of the piano, you can see the piano underneath. And that is a major scale, and it's made up of tones and semitones, and we can talk about whereabouts the tones and semitones are. But essentially the point is that there's one note that's more important than all the rest, and that is the tonic note, the home note if you like, which is C. And there's a sense of musical gravity with a C major scale where you have this 7th note wants to pull us to the tonic, because you have, you can't leave it there, you have to go there, right? And so there's a sort of musical gravity that sort of it's to do with tonal music, right? So tonal music that's in a key, has this idea of musical gravity. Some notes are more important than others. Some notes want to pull us to the tonic or to other places. Again, that's something that can be discussed further in the future. There are lots of there's a lot of music that is in a major key, and so this is a good reason to learn what a major key is and how it operates. So we can harmonise this scale by doing a sort of play one, miss one, if you like, to create the chords for this key. So if I do play one, miss one on the keyboard here, just using the white keys, I get chord 1. If I do the same thing starting on the next note up, D, I get chord 2, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, and then the last one is just chord 1 again. So these are the chords that you would play in the key of C major in diatonic music. That is music that just uses the chords that are belonging to the key. And that's great if you want to play in the key of C major and you want to play a song that just stays in the key of C major. That's fine, that's all you need to know. However, there are lots of songs that are in other keys, and you might want to compose in other keys. So I'm going to show you a method to get into the other keys. It's a very simple method. There are certain major keys that have sharps in, and certain major keys that have flats in. Now C doesn't have any. It just has the white notes of the piano, which are C, D, E, F, G, A and B, as I played on the keyboard. Now to learn the major keys with sharps in, there are just 3 rules to remember. If you remember nothing else from this video, this is the one thing I want you to remember. Go up 5, sharpen the 7th, keep the sharps you've already got. So we start in the key of C, that has no sharps, no flats. We go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is G. Okay, so then the next key we have is G major. Oops, I've got caps lock on here. G major. Now, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, because we've got a sharp in the 7th, right? And that's our scale. Go back to the Sibelius and you can see that. So if I go here now, so that 7th note has become F sharp, which is the black key on the piano, you can see on the keyboard. It's basically in order to preserve the ratio of tones and semitones and create the same major scale, but starting on a different note. So now we have G major. Now, we can keep going. So the observant among you will have spotted that the next key is going to be D, because it's the 5th note, right? We've got to go up 5. So here we go from G. G, A, B, C, D. That's 5, right? So the next one is D major. So we do D, E, just go up the alphabet. Now F sharp, because we've got to keep the sharps we've already got. G, A, B, C sharp, because we've got a sharp in the 7th, right? And then that ends up like this. Still sounds like a major scale to me. Perfect. The next one is A major, because we have to go up to 5, which is here. Go up 5, A. Okay, then we go up the alphabet. A, B, C sharp, because we've got to keep the sharps we've already got. D, E, F sharp, because we've got to keep the sharps we've already got. And G sharp, because we have to sharpen the 7th. Perfect. The next one, go up 5 to E. Now we have E major. E, F sharp, G sharp, keeping the sharps we already have. A, B, C sharp, and D sharp. Okay, go up 5 to B. Now we have B major. Oops, B major. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and our new sharp, which is A sharp. Now, go up 5. The next one is not F, but F sharp, because we already have the F sharp. So this one is now F sharp major. Okay, so we start with F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, yeah, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E sharp. Hang on a minute, E sharp? How can it be? Because if I'm here on this note, E, there's no black key between E and F now, is there? So E sharp actually is this note, which you'll see is the same button on the piano as F. But we have to call it E sharp. Why do we have to call it E sharp? Well, I'm just going to do the scale here. So, oh, it's spelling it all strangely. Yeah, so that's just Sibelius. So, you see here, we already have an F of some kind, right? So this is F sharp, and now it's trying to tell me that, oh, it's F natural now. But no, because we have an F sharp, we don't have an E of any kind, right? So we have to have an E of some kind, but it has to be E sharp, because we need every note name, if you like. We need an E something. So now we have E sharp, which is the same as you see the blue thing that's on the keyboard there. It's the same pitch as F, but we call it E sharp in this context, okay? So that's that, and then finally we have C sharp major. Now, this one, we've gone up 5 to C sharp, right? Now it's the same formula, all these scales are the same, they're just starting on different notes. So if you think about it, if you start a major scale on C sharp, they're just all going to be sharps, right? Because you're taking a C scale and just moving it up a semitone, right? So now we have C sharp, D sharp, E sharp from before, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B sharp. Now here's the same issue again. B sharp is the same pitch as C. So that's going to be my B sharp, yeah? So it's just spelling it funny here, so here we go. See, it just doesn't like doing it, but that's what we want, right? Yeah? Notice that that B sharp is the same pitch on the keyboard as C, but we can't call it C because we're in C sharp major. Okay? Good. So now, that's all very well and good, but you'll notice that there's no F major on here, is there? We don't have a key of F major, and that's a bit of a problem. So we need some other kind of scale in order to do this. So what we need now is something else. If I come to Sibelius and I say, okay, I'm gonna do a new scale. I'm gonna start on F, and I'm just gonna play the white notes on the piano. Here's what I get. Now you'll notice that one of those notes doesn't sound right. This one here is a wrong note if you want to have an F major scale. The problem is we don't have the right number of tones and semitones. The formula is not working. So this needs to be a semitone here, but it's a tone. And this here needs to be a tone, but it's a semitone. So we have to lower this one to B flat. So now, so what we've done is we've flattened that fourth note. And now we have an F major scale. So armed with that knowledge, we can come back to here and we can say, major keys, I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so major keys with flats, and actually what we're going to do is we're going to go up 4 and we're going to flatten the fourth, and then we're going to keep the flats we've already got. So what did we do? We did F major, didn't we? And we said F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, right? That's what we did to get our F major scale, remember? It's right here. Good. So what we have to do now is keep going. So go up 4, F, G, A, B flat. So our new key is B flat major. So I gotta go B flat, C, D, E flat, because we have to flatten the fourth, F, G, A. Let's see what happens if I play that scale. Let's see if Sibelius behaves this time. Aha, it did. So now we have B flat major. Beautiful. Okay, now what I love about this sort of set of ideas here is that the note you just flattened is now the new key, right? Go up 4, flatten the fourth, E flat major. So we have E flat, F, G, A flat, so we have to flatten the fourth, B flat, keep the flats we've already got, C, D, E flat. Good. Same thing again. Go up 4, A flat major, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, back to A flat again. Go up 4, D flat now. D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, D flat, C, right? Got to flatten that fourth, G flat. Yeah, pretty straightforward once you get used to it. Go up 4, G flat major. Keep the flats you've already got. G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat. But hold on, Tom, C flat, is that a real thing? Well, let's check it out. So I'll show you, so I've got to fix it now because Sibelius. There you go. So now, G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat, look at that. So C flat, it's the same key on the piano as B natural. But we have to call it C flat because we've already got a B of some kind. We have B flat. Looking at the piano here. C flat, D flat, B flat, F natural, G flat. So same thing as we had before. D flat, E flat, and F. And finally, we have C flat major, which is actually all the same buttons on the piano as B major, but in certain contexts we have to call it C flat major. And all of these are just going to be flattened, just like C sharp major, or they're all sharpened. Yeah, C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat. Yeah, same note as E, but we have to call it F flat, G flat, A flat, and B flat. So that is the major keys with flats in and the major keys with sharps in. So if you remember nothing else today, I want you to remember this. These three rules: start from C major, get the major keys with sharps in. Then these three rules: start with C major, that's how you get the major keys with flats in. Now I say to all of my students, the first 2 weeks of class when I'm teaching music theory, composition, things like that, I say to them, if you don't already have this together, spend the next 2 weeks every morning when you have your breakfast. I want you to sit down with a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, and do these two tables every morning. You know, just once every morning for 2 weeks, and then after that it should start to sink in a little bit. Okay? These tables are also really useful for figuring out things like relative minor and also modes, and we can do that in more detail shortly. Now, let's come back to C major. Good. So we're here. Remember I said you can use this now to find the chords. So those of you who are songwriters want to know what chords you can use in a key, or if you're a composer you want to know what chords you can use. So it's just a case of play one, miss one. So if I go just on the white notes of the piano, play one, miss one, play one, miss one, so on, I get my chords in the key of C major. Now I'm going to give these Roman numerals. In fact, no, I'm going to do it this way. Can I do it like this? So that's chord 1. This is chord 2, which I do lowercase because it's minor. Chord 3, which I do low, and I put a little minus sign for minor. Chord 4, which is major. Chord 5, which is major as well. Chord 6, which is minor. And then chord 7, which is diminished, so it gets a little circle. It should be like a little superscript circle, but that's fine. So this is a diminished chord. Yeah, I should play it, shouldn't I? Yes, that's the diminished chord. So, one thing then to remember as you go along is that chord 1 in a major key is going to be major. So, I'm going to call this C for C major. Chord 4 in a major key is going to be major, so I'm going to call it F major. This chord here, which is chord 5 in a major key, is also going to be major. So chords 1, 4 and 5 are going to be major. I'm going to write that in our Word document. So, so in a major key, chords 1, 4 and 5 are major, which leaves, of course, chords 2, 3, 6 are minor. Okay, chords 2, 3 and 6 are minor. Chords 2, 3 and 6 are minor. Okay, don't worry too much about the uppercase, lowercase, it doesn't matter too much. Oxford comma, there we go. Yeah, chords 2, 3 and 6 are minor. And chord 7 is diminished. Let's not worry too much about what that means right now. Chord 7 is diminished. Yeah, in a major key. So that means when you come back to these tables, let's say we're in the key of, I don't know, E flat major. We can say, well, we know, we can look at this, we can go, okay, chord 1, E flat major. Chord 4, A flat major. Chord 5, B flat major. And its minor chords then are F minor, G minor, and C minor, and then we have our D diminished. So I can go back to here. I mean, you can do it one of two ways. You can either do that, or you can get really comfortable with the scale and then you can. I gotta get rid of these. Hold on. Oh, and it does this annoyingly. It just looks at each note individually, so it doesn't know that I mean A flat. So you can get really good at the scale, and then you can basically, if you practice the scale on the keyboard even with one finger, you can then do play one, miss one. So even if I go, okay, I got to play one, miss one. So E flat, G, B flat. You see that? Play the E flat, miss the F, play the G, miss the A flat, play the B flat. Then I get my chord 1, right? Yeah. Then chord 2, same thing. Play one, miss one. So F, miss the G, play the A flat, miss the B flat, play the C, right? And then I get this chord, which is my F minor. Keep going up the same way, and I can say G minor, A flat major, B flat major, C minor, D diminished, back to E flat major again. So now I have my chords E flat, F minor, G minor, A flat major, B flat major. It's gone a bit off center, hasn't it? Oh no! Hold on. I gotta fix it. There we go, that'll do, won't it, for now? And then we have here C minor, and then we have our D diminished. Like that. Yeah, so there you are. So that is how you can find the chords, the diatonic chords in any of these major keys. And that is another really good thing to practice, because then you can start going, okay, I've got a song and it's 1, 4, 5. In the key of E flat major, or maybe I want to play it in this key. Whatever it is, right? So you can sort of get used to all these different keys. And one thing I would practice, once you get comfortable at the keyboard, just literally playing these scales one finger at a time. Like once you get used to drawing the tables, then you can go here and do, you know, one finger at a time, play each scale. You know, just with one finger, that's fine. You know. Just get used to that, and then you can learn the fingering if you want, you know, the proper fingering, so it's easier, but you don't really have to at this stage. The thing I would probably learn is just playing the chords, you know, in each key, and get used to playing, you know. And so on. And then you can use, you know, you can put your left hand in, just literally playing the lowest note, and then, you know, so I'll show you on the keyboard. So you could just play, you know, see my left hand is just playing the bottom note in each case. And then honestly, I would encourage you to just play along with some songs. I mean, the way I learned, because I sing as well, I learned just by learning Beatles tunes, which I know, I mean, it's in some ways the sort of early Beatles stuff is quite good because you can really hear the chords, and a lot of it, there's some of it's quite diatonic, so it's sort of easy enough to follow along. The other artist that I think is quite helpful is Taylor Swift at the moment. So a lot of her music, if you take, I don't know, something like A Blank Space or something, you know, that basically has diatonic harmony. So it's quite a nice way of sort of learning the fundamental things. You play along with some of her records, you know, and, you know, find out what the chords are or whatever, however you want to do it. But you sort of get used to them playing in all these different keys. That's the way I learned what key I'm in and how to be in a key and all that kind of stuff, is just by just playing through songs like that, writing your own songs, and pieces too. You know, you can play through, you know, create pieces. If you just have these chords and the scales, you can create diatonic pieces fairly simply. So yeah, so that's the start. But I think until you've grasped these two tables, being able to play these scales just with one finger on the keyboard and being able to just play the chords, you know, I think that's the first thing to take care of personally. But it won't take you long. You know, it won't take you long. And you can buy keyboards pretty cheap. You know, and I would encourage you to buy a keyboard that's, you know, 88 keys, so you can really get your hands on it, and you've got the full range. It could be the cheapest, you know, the cheapest keyboard. It doesn't really matter. Just something that you can visualize the music on. Now, the next thing is, well, okay, Tom, but we're always in a major key now. So what we can talk about next is relative minor. How do we get into the minor? Do I have to learn a bunch of more tables? No, we already have the table. The table's here. It's done. Okay. So let me make sure I am recording. Okay, good. So every major key has a cousin, a relative. Yeah, a relative minor key. So the way you find that relative minor key, and this, by the way, is a relative minor key that shares the same notes, the same key signature, right? So the key signature of C major is no sharps, no flats. The key signature of G major is one sharp, which is F sharp, yeah? The key signature of D major is it has two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, yeah? So the relative minor shares the key signature. So the way you find it is by looking in column 6. So if I'm in C major and I look at column 6, I see A. Now, A minor is the relative minor of C major. So if I start this same C major scale, but I play it starting on A, I'm just going to delete some of this stuff so we get it out of the way here. In fact, can I just do that? Yeah. If I play just the white notes on the piano, but with starting on A, you'll hear that sounds kind of more minor, doesn't it? But it's just the white keys of the piano, but now we're starting on A. Why does it sound minor? Well, there's a minor third interval between this A and this C. That's kind of what makes it feel like minor, which again, that's an intervals thing. That's another topic for another time maybe. But basically, that is then true of any of these. So if you want to play an E minor, what you do is you find where E is in column 6, and of course it's right here in G. So if I play this G major scale, you know, from E to E, and I make sure I play my F sharp here, I get this. So here. Yeah, so there you go, there's my E minor scale. Okay. Same thing, you can build chords, you know, just the same way that we did. And there you go. So that is how you find the minor. So you don't need any more tables to do that. Even more miraculously than that, these tables, you know, you can start on any one of these notes. You can start on note number 2, or you can start on note number 3, or you can start on note number 4, and so on. And if you do that, you get what's called a mode. You might have heard people talking about these things before. So if I start, let's say I start the C major scale, but now I do it on D, right? And I just play the white notes of the piano, but I start on D. Now you say, well, that kind of sounds like a minor scale. Well, yeah, it does kind of, but it's not exactly the same. There's a slight difference. The 6th note of the scale is slightly different. If we were really in D minor, we would be here, and we'd be playing D, E, F, G, A, B flat. But here, if we start on D here and play along with the C major scale, we end up with a B natural. So that's a slightly different scale. Now this is called D Dorian, and this is a mode. Once again, you can use it to build chords just the same way. And you get this modal harmony. And if we were to start the C major scale on E instead, we'd end up with a scale that sounds different again. It would sound like this. Oh, hang on, I need to do that again. Wrong button. Here we go. Now that's called E Phrygian. Okay, so there's a bunch of these modes, and they're all very useful, particularly when you build chords out of them. but they're all very useful for composing because they're very good at creating lots of different moods. And each one of them has a slightly different mood, and people say things like, I don't know, the Phrygian mode is dark and moody or something like that, or that the Dorian mode has a folky quality to it, or that the Lydian mode has a magical feeling to it, things like that. So all in all, if we look, we've got 7 columns, haven't we? So if I start on 1, I get just the major scale, right? Now there is a modal name for this called Ionian. The Ionian mode, those two things are the same thing. The Ionian mode. Number 2 we have Dorian. I'm not going to write, I guess I can write Dorian mode. Yeah, number 3 we have Phrygian mode. Number 4 Lydian mode. Number 5 Mixo-Lydian. Yeah, I'll keep writing mode now that I've started. Number 6 we said was the relative minor, didn't we? And that is true, but it also has a in fact I'm just going to write relative minor in brackets here, and then I'm going to write Aeolian mode. It's another name for it. And 7 finally is the Locrian mode. Not used all that often in music, the Locrian mode, because it's a little bit of a strange one. Remember I said about that musical gravity, that 7th note that wants to pull back to the tonic. If you kind of try and make the 7th note feel like the home note, it's kind of very unstable. It's almost like an unstable chemical compound or something. It doesn't want to be Locrian. It wants to go back to being major again. I'll show you if I play it. Oh, you know what? I gotta hang on. If I played the chords, you know, if I sort of try to force myself into be Locrian, and I say, you know, how I messed that up. It just wants to go back to C major. It doesn't want to be here. That diminished chord doesn't really work as a tonic chord. It just wants to go back to chord 1 again. So that is why the Locrian mode is not used really all that much. Sometimes in very heavy metal music, you hear it and things like that, but it's pretty unusual. Good. Okay. So that's some more ways that we can use these tables. So we can use it to find our major scales, find a relative minor. We can use it to build the chords of the keys that we're in, and we can also use it to find all of these modes. So that is why I tell my students to always do these tables first thing when they're waking up and having their breakfast and things, because there's more to it than just learning the scales. There's actually more that you can get out of it. You can use these to transpose. So if you are doing a song and you know you're doing it in one key and then the singer shows up and they have a cold and they can't sing it in that key, it's easy to transpose because you know all the keys and you can just go, oh, the song is just, I don't know, chord 1, you know, 1, 6, 4, 5 in D major. Okay, well, what is that? It's 1 is D major, 6 is B minor, 4 is G, and 5 is A. Okay, I know that. Okay, you know what though? We got to play it in E major because that's going to be easier today. Okay, well, 1, E major, 6, C sharp minor, 4, A major, and 5, B major. Great. Or you know what? Actually, we got to play it in B flat. Okay. You know? And that's how it works. That's how it goes. Okay? So that's a lot of information about pitch. And there's lots more to say. For example, what if we don't want to just play 3-note chords? We can play 4-note chords. So if we come back to here, hold on. Right? Those are what we call triads. There's three notes in each one, but we can go further. We can do play 1, miss 1, but we can do 4 notes instead of 3. We can keep going, and we can say, okay, you know, it's kind of more evocative and more interesting. So this chord, you know, it's quite pretty compared with it's a little plain sounding. You know, and so on. So now we have chord 1, and it's 1 major 7. You can do MAJ, but MA is fine. And then chord 2 minor 7. We have chord 3, which is going to be chord 3 minor 7. Chord 4, which is going to be 4 major 7. Chord 5, which is going to be just 5 7, which means dominant 7th. Chord 6, minor 7, and then we have this one, which is diminished, and now it has a 7th on top. It's not a diminished 7th because it would have to have an A flat to be a diminished 7th. Again, that's to do with intervals, which we can talk about another time. But what I'm going to call it right now is 7. I don't know if I can do half diminished, so I'm going to do minor 7 flat 5. So I'm going to call it right now. Okay, so here we have C major 7. This is D minor 7. Wrong button. E minor 7. F major 7. G7. A minor 7. And then this is going to be B minor 7 flat 5. Okay, so that is our 4-note chords, and this is going to be true of all those other major keys we've looked at as well. So that's going to work across the whole thing. Doesn't matter which one of those major keys we're in. That same idea: 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 dominant 7, 6 minor 7, and 7 minor 7 flat 5. Okay, that's going to be the way that goes. And yes, you can add another note and another note and another note. You can keep going, which is a whole other thing. We'd have to talk about intervals, I think, to really get to that point. I think that's probably enough theoretical kind of stuff to start with. We'd have to talk about intervals really to do the next bit. I suppose we can talk about intervals. Yeah, why don't we do intervals? Let's do intervals. So let's talk about intervals. So, an interval is just the distance between two notes. That's all an interval is, okay? So, I'm going to change this bar to a different time signature. I think I'm going to go 2, 1, like that. And then we can hide the time signature. Okay, so, intervals. Now, so the distance between these two notes is a tone. Yeah, and in the key of C, D is the second note. So we call this interval a second. C, D, right? D is the second above C. And it's major second. I guess it's the second note of a major scale, and so major second. Makes sense. Now, if I were to make it D flat, that would now be a minor second. So those are the seconds. You have minor second, which is a semitone, and then you have major second, which is like that, a tone. Now, a minor third would be this, C to E flat. And you'll notice in the key of C minor that the third note is E flat. So that's a minor third. If I make it E natural, we get a major third. Now, if I go to there, we don't get a major fourth, we get what's called a perfect fourth. Here I it sort of sounds clean and open and resonant and that sort of thing. Doesn't really sound major or minor. And I suppose you could argue it sort of sounds major because it sounds pure or something, but it's got a purity to it. and it's called a perfect fourth. It kind of predates the major and minor system, the sort of droning, chanting, medieval music and things like that used perfect fourths and perfect fifths, which they considered to be the sort of most consonant sound. So I guess that's where the perfect bit comes from. Now, I can make this sharp, and then this becomes an augmented fourth. So we've taken a perfect fourth and we've made the distance between those two notes bigger by a semitone. Yeah? So what we've done now is we've augmented. If I augment something, it makes it bigger. Like if I augment my hair, I pull it out this way, makes it bigger, augmented. And if you make something smaller, you diminish it. Yeah? So this is an augmented fourth. It's also called a tritone. It divides the octave exactly in half in terms of the number of semitones. And it's a very dissonant interval and it's got a lot of history and things. Now, C to G, again a very sort of pure sound, and it's called a perfect fifth. You know, C, D, E, F, G, so that's 5, right? So that's a perfect fifth. Now if I would flatten this, we'd end up with the same thing we just had, this tritone, but now we, instead of calling it an augmented fourth, we'd call it a diminished fifth. Same interval, but because we're calling this C and G flat, not C and F sharp, it's not a fourth, it's a fifth, it's a diminished fifth. Okay? Similarly, if we can go back to perfect again, and then we can do an augmented fifth. Yeah? Which is the same thing, really, as a minor sixth. Right? Sounds the same. But because we're calling it A flat, not G sharp, it has to be a sixth of some kind. C to A is a sixth. So it's a minor sixth. And of course, you've guessed it, C to A is a major sixth. Actually, it does sound major, doesn't it? Okay. There is such a thing as an augmented sixth, but I think we'll just leave that one out for now. I think you know what that is anyway. It'd be A sharp. Yeah, so that's, well, we can leave that one out for now. Let's go on to sevenths. So we have a major seventh, right? Remember C major seventh, the chord, C, E, G, B natural, right? So the distance between C and B is called a major seventh. It's the seventh note of a major, C major scale, C major seventh. Now, if we flatten it, we get minor seventh. Okay, it's a really important interval, the minor seventh, so keep that one in your mind. And then finally we have what we call a perfect octave. Just C to C. So I'll go through them. So we have, I'll do them in order. Minor second, major second for D natural, E flat is a minor third, E natural is a major third, then we have perfect fourth, augmented fourth, which is the same as diminished fifth, right? Oops, perfect fifth, augmented fifth, which is the same as a minor sixth, then we have our major sixth, then we have our minor seventh, and finally our major seventh, and then our perfect octave. So you've got, in a nutshell, seconds, thirds, and sixths can be minor or major. There are other options too, but that's kind of the first step. Fourths and fifths can be, yeah, a diminished fourth is the same as a major third, isn't it? So I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to say fourths can be perfect or augmented. Fifths can be perfect, diminished, or augmented. Sixths. Oh, we've done sixths. Yeah, we've done sixths. And then sevenths can be minor or major, and then we have our octaves, which is, yeah, octaves are perfect. I mean, yes, there are other things, but to begin with, that's a good place to start. So C to D flat is a minor second, C to D is a major second, C to E flat is a minor third, C to E is a major third, C to F is a perfect fourth, C to F sharp is an augmented fourth, C to G flat is a diminished fifth, C to G is a perfect fifth, C to G sharp is an augmented fifth, C to A flat is a minor sixth, same as the one above in terms of the sound of it. C to A is a major sixth, C to B flat is a minor seventh, C to B is a major seventh, and C to C is a perfect octave. That's where to start for now. It's to do with the number of semitones. You can count it by semitones, but it's also to do with the actual names of the notes. For example, like C to C sharp is not really technically a minor second, it's an augmented unison. Yeah, so it's important that you actually don't just use the number of semitones, you've got to use the note names as well. Yeah, so from here you can figure out things like the different types of four-note chords. So if we go back to here, sorry, I just got to fix some things here. If we go back to here, back to our four-note chords in C major. Yeah, when we had major seventh, minor seventh, and so on. You can figure out that like a major seventh chord is a major triad with a major seventh interval on the top, whereas a dominant seventh chord. So this is our major seventh chord. That's what it sounds like. But this chord, a major triad with a minor seventh on the top. So this is what it would be if it was G major 7. It'd have the F sharp, but it has a minor 7th. The F, that's a dominant 7th chord. So this is types of 7th chord now, right? So this was intervals. And then you've got types of 7th chord. So you've got a major chord, or major triad I should say, with a major 7th on top is a major 7th chord. A major triad with a minor 7th on top is a dominant 7th chord, really important that is. And then you have a minor chord, a minor triad with a minor 7th on top is a minor 7th chord. Those are the three main ones. So let's stick with that. So if we come back to C here, we have, so we have, let me just delete these other chords real quick, hang on. So we have, this is C major 7, yeah? Because it's a major triad with a major 7th, and then I can do C E, G, B flat, which gives me that chord, which is C dominant 7. And actually for short, just C7. Why is it dominant 7? Because chord 5 is the dominant, and if you have diatonic 7th chord on chord 5, it's that chord, dominant 7th, and it wants to pull right back to chord 1, which would be F, if this were chord 5. Okay, then we have a C minor triad, whoops, with a minor 7th on top, is that chord. C, E flat, G, and B flat. I'll rewrite the flat. Yeah, so that is C minor 7. Now you might be thinking, okay, Tom, but what if we had a minor triad with a major 7th on the top? Well, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds like this. That is called, I'm just going to put the accidentals in. Yeah, you see the natural, the B natural there. So that is called C minor bracket major 7. C minor major 7. It's very mysterious sounding. It's used in James Bond films. You know, good evening, Mr. Bond, you know. So that's one thing I often say in my classes. So a minor triad with a major 7th on top is a minor major 7th chord. Major 7th goes in brackets. Like that. Minor major 7th chord like that. Okay, so those are your main types of 7th chord. Also very useful. Okay. Now if we were to extend these even further, so let's come back here. If I said, okay, what if I put another note on top of this now? Well, let's see. I get this chord, which is very pretty. Now the note I've put on top is D, right? Because it's just the next one up. You see line, 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 play one, miss one, play one, miss one. Now D is the second note, right? So you could call this, you know, that, which, that's not really the way you would do it. Because you'll notice that this is an octave higher than the root note, which is the C. So actually what we call this is 9. Because if you think about it, you go from C to C, the C is 8, and so D is the one after that, it's 9, right? If we go even further and add another note on top, we end up with this. Now that is a little bit of an uglier sound because it's got a perfect 4th in the top. But that would be 11. So 11 is the same as 4. Okay. Finally, we can add one more note before we start getting really crazy, which is up to here, which is the A on top, which is the same as a 6th, but we actually call it a 13. Okay. Typically in this chord, because it sounds prettier, you would probably do sharp 11, so you'd probably do F sharp, and then you would get this chord, which might be a little tricky for me to play. You know, very pretty chord. So that's how you get to extensions and things. So you could, and again, it just really depends on the context where you would use that chord, and often you probably would, because of the issue of the 11th being a bit difficult, what you might do is just leave it out and just do that chord. C major 7, 9, 13, which would sound like this, which is quite a pretty chord. So this is now getting into chord extensions, and kind of once you get past 13, you're getting into sort of fairly modern, sort of 20th century classical kind of territory, and there's a book on my bookshelf somewhere called, Vincent Persichetti. Vincent Persichetti. In fact, I'll unshare my screen and then you can see. 20th Century Harmony, where he talks about these extensions and extensions and extensions and so on. But yeah, for now, kind of 13th is probably as far as you actually want to go. Let me go back to sharing again. Hang on. Okay, stereo, good. Let's go back to sharing again. Yeah, and then you can do all sorts of different things. So on a dominant 7th chord, so if you had, let's say we're in the key of C and we did chord 5, like that. In fact, let's go down an octave. No, we'll leave it there. You could just keep adding and keep adding. So you can have this, which is G7, and you want to put the extensions in brackets. So yeah, G7 9. Actually, on chord 5, you can do 11 and you can do 13. So we could do. If we kept going, we would have. Yeah, again, the 11 is kind of not. It's kind of. It's a little dissonant because it clashes with the 3rd. It's a little bit of a clash. So we'd probably wouldn't do the 11, but we could do the 13, which would be an E, wouldn't it? So you'd have this. It's a fairly jazzy type of chord. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing that you can do if you keep extending. Let me put this down an octave, see what it sounds like. Yeah, that sounds a little better there, right? Kind of getting into some jazzy territory. We could decorate chord 4 the same way. You can do F major 7 and you can keep adding. So we could do F major 7, 9, and then we could, if we add the 11th, in this case it's going to be sharp 11 anyway, because it's going to be the F to the B as an augmented 4th. So yeah, and then you could add 13 as well. Yeah, it's again quite pretty if you had F major 7 brackets 9. It's going to be sharp 11 actually, because if we were in F major, the B would be B flat, wouldn't it? So we call it based on the chord, not based on the key. Yeah, so that gives us that. In fact, why don't we? Can we do this? Oh, this is a dangerous move. Aha! Now I can do this, right? Nice. So now we have 1, 4, 5 like this. Yeah, that's really pretty. So let's go. Why don't we go back to 1 again at the end? Those are just chord extensions, basically. Yeah, extending the chords beyond 7th chords even. Yeah, nice. So you're getting outside of, at this point you sort of become more, becomes about artistic license, about which extensions you use or don't use or whatever. But these are I'm just showing you kind of what the possibilities are carrying on from where we've been. So I think this is probably a good point to stop for now. But why don't I just very quickly recap some of the things that we've looked at. So the most important thing really, I think, are these 2 tables. That's the first thing you want to get. Major keys with sharps, major keys with flats. Then we found our relative minor by looking at column number 6. We also found the diatonic chords for each key by doing play 1, miss 1 in these keys. And I'd like you to play these on the keyboard to really get familiar. We've learned about the nature of the different diatonic chords. We've learned if we play these scales from different positions, we get these different modes that are fun to mess around with. We've learned a little bit here about intervals, about different types of intervals. We've learned about different types of 7th chord. And then we've also learned about 9ths, 11ths and 13ths in a sort of simple way. But yeah, we could come back to that. Yeah, so I guess the next step would be things like secondary dominant chords, modal interchange chords and so on. There's quite a lot more that you can do with harmony in a pop music context. And then also there's all sorts of rhythm things. I mean, it's sort of endless, but at least if you can get some of those basic things down, that's a really good foundation from which to build upon. So hopefully I'll come back on here and just keep adding to this, part 2, part 3, and let's just see where it goes. But that's a good place to start. So thank you for listening.